All right, well, respectfully for those that have shown up on time, we're going to get started and we'll call the meeting to order. And Chris, you will please take roll call.
Will do. Thanks so much. Start off with Councilor Brake.
Here.
Greg DiLoretto.
Here.
Tony Fields.
I'm here.
William Gifford.
Here.
Councilor Golaby.
That's like Billy Chinook, and I am here.
Love it. That's great.
Even in a tie.
Brian Johnson.
Here.
Councilor Khosrowbadi.
I'm here.
Larry Lindstrom.
Present.
Mayor Milch.
Present.
Kat Miller.
Present.
Colleen Rockwell.
Here.
Rita Baker. Oh,
there's Rita.
There she is. All right, and we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, everyone. With that, I'll turn it over to Greg, who will give us some updates.
All right, thank you. Chris, do you want to pull up? I do have some slides to show tonight.
Yeah, we'll do.
So first, I want to talk about Clackamole. It's been a wonderful project. The picture on the left is Blake Rains on the left and Jeff Stallard at the end of the tunnel. So before they disconnected the tunnel boring machine, we did inspections of the pipeline, and this was literally, just before they disconnected it and flooded the pipeline.
Sitting under the river, which is pretty cool.
Yes. I will say, so in July, there's going to be a conference. The Oregon Association of Clean Water Agencies has a conference annually, and our pipeline project is going to be what they call the plenary, or the kind of the most prestigious session of that 3 or 4 day conference. So we're super excited about that. It's an enormous accomplishment, and we laughed, we cried. There's going to be a great story to tell, many elements to the story. So anyway, next slide.
Too bad you don't have like any mini Clackamoles to give out to people.
Oh, that'd be cute.
I don't know how you do that, but
We'll have stickers.
oh, stickers are good. Stickers are good.
So this was the retrieval day, and we wanted to make this kind of either a media event or invite you folks and other people, but due to the construction schedule, I mean, there's so much going on with the I-205 bridge, and they didn't know exactly when it was going to be coming out of the water. So we literally had like 45 minutes notice that we needed to be there to see this. So that's it coming out of the water. It looks small compared to everything around it because everything's so massive, but yeah, it was quite the sight. Next slide. This is the crushing chamber. So this is what's behind the cutting head of the machine. And the one thing that just baffles my mind is that, we tunneled 9 feet diameter, a half a mile through all kinds of different material. Everything went through those 3-inch ports that you see on the bottom of that cutting crushing chamber, and through an 8-inch pipe a half a mile back to the processing plant where we put the drop shaft. Yeah, that's just fascinating to me, that the amount of violence, frankly, that happened in that crushing chamber over the months that it was in the ground. All right, next slide. So we did have a rain on snow event. I think this was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So the tunnel, the end of the pipe that's in the river has a screen on it to keep fish from, coming up into the pipe. But it doesn't have what we call the duckbill diffusers on it yet. That'll happen this summer. And so water from the river is allowed into the pipe and will find its natural level. And so that's the shaft where the tunnel was bored, and that was the level that the river reached, a half a mile away from where our outfall is, which was pretty dramatic.
Greg, what are those round poles, or I'm trying to imagine what the wall of that looks like.
Oh, yes. So those are essentially, well, Jeff can explain better than I can, but essentially they auger down and fill, they call it secant, I think. But yeah, they're shafts that are drilled down and filled with a concrete type material, and that's what forms the shaft.
At first, I was imagining columnar basalt, but
Yeah, yeah, reminiscent of that. All right, next shaft or next slide. The other thing that we did that was super fun is a couple of tree planting and events. One at our Kellogg Creek facility where we planted 23 trees, 94 shrubs, and we did it in-house. And so we had our staff participate in that event, and it was really great. And next slide. And we did the same thing at our Tri-City facility. We actually were asked by Oregon City, you know, there's a path that runs alongside of our facility. There were some trees there, the cottonwoods mostly, that were considered hazardous by the city, and so they asked us to remove them. We also removed some additional cottonwood trees that were kind of problematic, and had another fun day of having staff plant 23 trees, 94 shrubs at Kellogg, 29 trees, 20 shrubs at Tri-City. So that was super fun. And a good neighbor activity. So the other thing I wanted to mention, so we're folks that have been around a while know that we've done this clean water exchange, and it's something that we do every couple years to reach out to you and to the community and ask what we're doing well, how we can improve, and you know, and then we take that information and translate that into action. Alexa Morris is going to be leading that, and so you're going to be hearing from her this spring to set up some interviews and have some questionnaires. And again, it's just our way of continuing to like reach out and make sure that we're connecting in meaningful ways, and our commitment to continuous improvement. So be expecting that. What else do I want to mention? I think that's it for now. I will say, so I went to a conference in Dallas about a month ago. It was the Water Environment Federation / American Water Works Association Utility Management Conference. And Alexa went, Ron went, Matt House, our operations manager, went. And it was, you know, I say we go to places like that to steal other people's good ideas, and I mean it. But the one thing that struck me is there was a lot of really good talks about public engagement and project delivery and project management, and, you know, developing capital plans, delivering, again, capital projects. But a lot of it was born out of necessity. Like there was a problem they were trying to solve. And and I'm not tooting our own horn here. I'm just saying, like, we're doing many, if not all, of those best practices that we're seeing out in, you know, across the country, in the absence of having that kind of problem to solve. So it just gave me, you know, the fact that we know what we need to build, when we want to build it, and how we're going to pay for it. And we have good relationships with the communities that we serve now. Just tells me that we're in a really good place. And yeah, we stole some other people's good ideas, but we're not in any kind of emergency or crisis or trying to solve a vexing problem. So it felt great, honestly.
I'm sure you shared good ideas with them as well.
Well, we didn't do any. This is one of the few conferences that we've done recently where we haven't done a presentation. But it did strike me that, you know, maybe we need to tell the tale of, you know, the boring utility, and why we're boring, and why that's a good thing, and how, and the stories that we tell about the planning that we do, and yeah, and, you know, things like the system development charges, making sure that we're, you know, charging what we need to charge, and have rates that are appropriate to what we need to build, and understand, you know, the long-term needs of our community. the importance of community engagement and having support of as a regional utility. Yeah, I do think we have a story to tell. It's just not dramatic, and that's a good thing.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Thank
Aren't
you.
any other questions? We'll move on to approving the January minutes. I hope you
Oh,
all had
yes,
a chance.
sorry, I didn't get there in time, Greg, so I wanted to ask a quick question.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sorry.
Greg, guys, what kind of trees did you guys plant?
We planted, well, all native trees. So I was actually sick at the Kellogg event, but I did participate at Tri-City, and we planted some ponderosa pine in one area. We planted red osier dogwood. We planted Douglas fir. There was a couple other ones that I don't remember exactly what they were.
Okay, thank you. In
Mhm.
case I get asked, I want to know, because, people say native species and they don't know exactly what that means, so.
Yeah, it was a planting plan that we got approved because, again, we removed some trees, and so we submitted a planting plan to Oregon City, and they approved it. So
Thank you.
sure.
Any other questions? Okay, so back to the minutes. We've all had an opportunity to look at those. We need a motion to approve if there aren't any corrections.
I so move.
I have a
Second.
motion. I got a second. We need, I guess, roll call.
Alrighty, Rita Baker,
I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay,
Christina Brown,
Here.
yes.
It's I.
that was the first,
Aye.
that was the roll call.
I heard roll call.
No,
so I
you're
got
right, you're
confused.
right. All right, so for the minutes, but I do appreciate the hear. Okay, and Councilor Reich,
Abstain. I also was not at that meeting.
okay, Craig DeLoretta,
Yes.
Tony Fields,
Aye.
William Gifford,
Yes.
Councilor Goloby,
Aye.
Brian Johnson,
Aye.
Councilor Khosrowbadi,
Aye.
Larry Lindstrom,
Aye.
Mayor McGriff,
I.
Mayor Milch,
Yes.
Kat Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Rockwell.
Yes.
All right.
Excellent. Minutes are approved then. As
Mr.
submitted.
Chair. I
Yes,
have
sir.
a point of order is that I hope that everybody understands that Robert's Rules of Order say you don't have to vote on the minutes,
Right.
that you can accept them by consensus. It does move things along a little faster.
Right. And that's what we were going to, but we did have a request that we approve the minutes by motion. So that's what we're doing. But we can have a conversation about that. And you guys as a committee can decide whether you want to do it the way Robert's rules or we do it individually.
William, we're going fast enough as it is. We're not trying to exceed the world speed record.
On the other hand, there's no need to drag something out if it's not necessary.
Well, it's not dragging it out. So we're going to agree to disagree.
All right. Well, you can think about it, everyone. And if we want to have a conversation about that at the next meeting, we can add it to the agenda. So I will move to public comment. Chris, do we have any public that would like to comment?
If there's anyone from the public, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then we will move to the next item, committee roles and bylaws. So my predecessor, I guess, would annually take a moment to talk about our bylaws, and it was suggested that I do the same. So here goes. First, the purpose of our advisory committee is to provide input, make recommendations on surface water, wastewater issues affecting the West Service Area. And we were created in September of 2017. And a few of us have been members since that time. Myself, I think William, you were an original member. I think Christopher is original member. Rita, I think you were an original member. I think that's the ones that are still on that were original members of the group. I think I found interesting, and Greg alluded to it a minute ago, I spent 30 years working in local government in the Portland area. And what I find unique about our committee is that it was really staff created, which is rare. Typically, advisory boards are typically created by the elected officials to address, like Greg mentioned, some issue or some topic area. But this was created by the staff, and of course now the Board of Commissioners approved the creation of the committee, and our members are approved by them. So we've kind of folded into that, but it didn't start out really in that vein. And he created the staff, and Greg created it because they wanted input from the many stakeholders that WES provides service to. See, our committee is intended to strengthen WES's relationship with its key stakeholders and customers at both the regional and the local levels. That's for the purpose of maintaining a strong and fully functioning operation that supports surface water and wastewater services in Clackamas County. And Greg, I was thinking when you were talking, if you're looking for a topic at a conference, I think the topic of this advisory committee and the success we've had, and I think that's a message that a whole lot of other public agencies could learn from, because I think you would agree, commissioners would agree, and even we agree as a committee. I think it's made a big difference, particularly for those of us that have lived in Clackamas County for a very, very long time and kind of remember the previous days. Our committee's intended, as I said, to strengthen WES relationships, and that's our mission. And that's why we have such a large committee. There are 21 voting members on our committee. Now, one of the requirements in our bylaws, members have to live or they have to work in our service area. So you'll notice sometimes people go off our committee simply because they don't work, typically because they don't work here, but maybe they don't live here. Our bylaws also state we can't do proxy votes. They're not allowed. Currently, we have 6 ratepayers from cities within the service area. I'm one of those ratepayers from West Lynn. We have 2 ratepayers from unincorporated portions of Clackamas County. We have 6 elected officials that were appointed by the cities. Now, when we started back in 2017, there were only 2 elected officials to represent cities. But those cities that were left out, they saw how much fun we were having studying sewerage and stormwater that they wanted to join the fun. So we amended our bylaws to say, come one, come all. We have 2 environmental representatives. We have 2 members of the development community. We have 2 business owners or business managers from our service area. And we have 1 representative from the very beginning from the city of Milwaukee, which has been on the committee from the beginning as a result of a previous agreement between the city and WES. So that's our group. We serve for 3 years and there aren't any term limits. So it's a lifetime deal. It's like Supreme Court. The chair and the vice chair are appointed every January. And as we noted, we do follow Robert's Rules of Order, and I got to make this side note here. So Robert was a civil engineer for the U.S. Army. He published his book in 1876 after he realized his inexperience, led to an unproductive church meeting. The rules were inspired by procedures in the U.S. Congress. So there you go. Some operational notes from our bylaws. I will start the meeting on time once we have a quorum, being respectful of the members that do show up on time. If you're unable to attend, our bylaws say we're supposed to give 24 hours notice before the meeting, but things come up during that time. And so just as long as you let us know, I think we can work around that one. But if you do have 2 absences without advance notifications, according to our bylaws, it may necessitate your replacement. And I think, if you have a couple meetings and you don't tell anybody about it, you're probably not really interested in the committee anymore anyway. So it's kind of obvious you don't want to play. Our bylaws contain a section regarding training opportunities, which staff will make us aware of. And we are allowed 1 opportunity a year, and the funds are budgeted for that purpose. So I mentioned, I think at a previous meeting, the Pacific Northwest Clean Water organizations having their annual meeting in Portland this summer. So that'd be a great one for those of us to go to, and staff will keep us alert of that. And finally, if we wish to amend our bylaws, we can do that. We should submit them to the county council for approval, and then they're approved by us. They're approved by our committee. So that's what I got. Are there any questions? I don't know if I can answer them, but got staff that can help. I see, Denise, you have a question or a comment?
I am wondering whether some of the history in your synopsis got left out, because back in the day when I worked for the city of Oregon City, it was the Tri-City Sewer District, and it was Oregon City, Gladstone, and West Lynn is what I recall. And I don't remember Milwaukee being a part of that. So
Well, these are two different things. This was
Right.
established. We used to have the Tri-City Budget Committee. That's actually how I got involved in WES. I was a member of the Tri-City Budget Committee for the plant. Milwaukee was part of the Kellogg system. And so the
System.
agreement WES had was with the Kellogg system and the city of Milwaukee. This was all created, I say, in 2017. So it was after, I mean, it was after all of those things went on. That's why I didn't go back beyond our committee from when we started.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Did I get that
I
right,
was not
Greg?
aware that Kellogg was a separate district. I just know about having to go
Right.
to meetings at dealing with Tri-Cities
Right.
all the
Right.
time.
That's right. Any other comments, clarification, or otherwise?
Thanks for the recap.
You're welcome. You and I are, and Rita and Chris are kind of the old timers on this committee, so for the
Looks
history.
like a question for Mayor Milch.
Oh, yeah, Mayor. Michael?
The Clackamas County Board of Commissioners serves in a lot of capacities. They become the governing body for just about every little organization in the county. So when we bring things to them, they're the ones really with the final vote. They're still one step above us, even though we have this very strong functioning committee with lots of representation. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. I mean, we are, as I said, we are an advisory board really to the staff and then to the commissioners. They take our recommendations to them. But you're right. The commissioners are the governing body of WES. And, and I've done this for a long time now, and I've gone to the commissioner meetings, and I will tell you, they're very respectful of the comments and the things that we come up with. I mean, they appreciate the fact that 21 people, that's a huge group of people, are willing to take time out of their schedules. I mean, you elected officials have meetings almost every night. So
Amen.
yeah, so they're very respectful of the fact that you do that. And I mean, they appreciate our recommendations and give them great weight when they're having their conversations.
And I would say since this, in its current form came together, there's never been, any significant recommendation from this body that the board has not adopted, whether it's a
Right.
budget, whether it's system development charges, whether it's a 5-year
Right.
capital improvement plan, it's always been accepted.
I mean, you think about the amount of work we all put in to study these issues, to read these great reports, it saves the commissioners time having to go through all that stuff. I mean, they do, but they know there's another body. So I'm happy and enjoy serving on the committee, and I'm sure you folks do too. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the state of the district. I'll turn it back over to Greg.
All right, Chris. So we haven't done this before, but I wanted to run this by you folks. So for the past several years, on an annual basis, I go to each of the cities that we serve and give them an annual report. And I'm gonna walk you through kind of the core part of the annual report. Each one of them is tailored to the communities, the cities that we're serving. So if we're doing Gladstone, we'll talk about the play park that we worked on that year together and things like that, and community events that we've participated in throughout the year. But I wanted to run kind of the basic presentation by you folks and see if you have any ideas for ways to make it better, or have anything that you think I'm not talking about that I should be talking about, or talking about that I shouldn't be talking about. So anyway, next slide. So I always start with our vision and our mission, because I think that's important. And you folks know this stuff, and many of the city councils or the commission that we talk to also know this stuff. But there's people that cycle in and out, and so every year we kind of want to, and there's people in the community that are either present or watching ultimately. So we want to make sure that we go to kind of the core of what WES does for the community. Next slide. Including our focus areas. Next slide. And our service area. Next slide. And again, we always like to talk about some stats about what we do. The 7 billion gallons a year cleaned is a pretty significant statistic, and a lot of people don't realize that we do have 5 different treatment facilities, and we serve over 200 or close to 200,000 people. Next slide. And then we also talk about our structure with our advisory committee and our board of county commissioners being the ultimate decision makers. Next slide. And I always like to focus on our planning efforts. I know a lot of people think, oh, government, they plan and then they put it on a shelf. And I really think that we've demonstrated over and over again that we don't do that. We plan and then we implement the plan. And so I like to talk about that long range planning that we do and how it ultimately translates into a 5-year capital improvement plan and a budget and a strategic plan that we are accountable for. So next slide. Next slide. Talk about financial stewardship. Where does our money go? That's always important. Next slide. And I always like to talk about the people that are out there doing this work. It's hard work and they are dedicated. The county recently did what do you call it? Employee engagement survey that talks about how engaged, the workforce is and how I guess satisfied and happy and really engaged in the work that they do and feeling supported. And WES was very, very near, if not at the top of the heap when it comes across the entire county of all the different departments. We have people here every day that are doing the work because they love the work that they do and they believe in the mission and in serving our community. And so that's just wonderful. So I always like to talk about those people. Next slide. Also, people think, oh, wastewater, you guys, take what goes down our toilets and do stuff with it. But we also talk about watershed health because that's a big part of what we do. Next. And again, we always want to keep infrastructure on the front burner for any political folks and make sure that people hear about the importance of the infrastructure. Next slide. Love to talk about Clackamal, and that's something we talk to everybody about because we had just so much fun with it. And yeah, next slide. We're also, over the past several years, have worked on energy conservation. We spend about $1 million a year on electricity, and we're always looking for ways to partner with whether it's Portland General Electric or Energy Trust of Oregon. Every capital project that we touch has a conservation element to it, so we like to talk about that and the progress that we've made. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. Same thing, next slide. Okay, and I think that's about it. Next slide. Oh, and then obviously the partnerships. And this is, again, this one is tailored very much to the different cities that we're, councils or the commission that we're at, talking about partnerships within the community and how important that is for us. Next slide. And I think that's it. So again, that's in a nutshell, kind of the topical flow of what we talk about with the various communities that we serve. And I'd love to hear if you have ideas. You don't have to, I know this, you don't have to do it today, but if you have thoughts about things that we should be talking about out in the community that weren't reflected, please let me know. And I'd love to tailor our presentations to make sure that we're really hitting the mark.
Looks like William, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just perhaps a suggestion.
Yeah.
This is well put together. I would the only thing that I would possibly put on top of this is at every presentation that's given, I think you need to remind the electeds particularly that this organization of WES is open to suggestions and public comments. And I didn't see anywhere in there where it was like not exactly a call to action, but something saying, if you want to get in touch with us, here's how to get in touch with us.
Okay. That's why I wanted to do this tonight. That's perfect.
That's a good question. Good point. Anybody else? Nope. Okay, well, thank you, Greg. Another incredibly strong year for the organization, and Wonderful. Well, that puts us up to the SDC discussion. Erin's going to lead that. This will be a discussion where we'll be looking for some motions, and she'll talk about that as she gets near the end of her presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Erin, and Ron, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. All right. My name is Erin Blue. I'm the Finance Manager for WES, and I will be presenting tonight part 2 of our System Development Charge update. Next slide, please. So part 1 was informative. We did that in January, and it included a comprehensive overview of SDCs, a walkthrough of the methodology, and a history of SDCs at WES. As Greg mentioned, we're going to be requesting a motion to recommend approval of the methodology tonight. So this presentation is essentially a condensed version of part 1 as a refresher, with ample time allowed at the end for the committee to discuss next steps. Next slide, please. Right, SDCs are one-time fees that apply to new developments or changes to existing development that increase system demand. And they're a mechanism to recover the cost of infrastructure that's necessary for the growth that that infrastructure serves. The legal framework for SDCs is established by state statute, which provides a uniform framework for the development of methodologies and also specifies which utilities can assess system development charges and how the resulting revenues can be used. The statute also outlines the main components of SDCs, the reimbursement fee and improvement fee components, and the general rules for the basis of the calculation. SDC methodologies are the application of that framework and specific to each organization. They detail which components are included in an organization's SDC, how those components are calculated in terms of both the cost basis and the unit basis. State statute also specifies the mechanism by which an SDC rate can be established or modified. Oh, yes, William.
I think it might be important somewhere in here, and maybe this is a good place for it, to mention to the audience that there are actually 5 SDCs, so that they don't think that this is the only grab at money. That we are only one of 5 I don't know, venues that that are charging SDCs.
That's a great point. Yeah, thank you. So WES charges a wastewater and a stormwater SDC. There are also transportation SDCs. I don't recall the other. Yeah,
Parks.
that's it.
Parks.
Yeah, so that is good context
And
to share.
water.
Thanks, William. So a methodology update requires adoption at a public hearing after a 90-day notice and a 60-day review period. WES has been periodically adjusting our SDCs by an inflationary index. We typically use the Engineering News Record 20 City Construction Cost Index, and those adjustments are made annually by a resolution or order. They don't require any notice under statute, but we do generally provide notice of at least 60 days as we're sharing that information with our stakeholders and the housing development community when we publish the budget document. Next slide, please. So it's a best practice to periodically review an organization's SDC methodology to ensure that it reflects the latest projections for infrastructure costs and our planning assumptions. Our methodologies have been on about a 5-year review schedule. We last reviewed ours in 2019. And most of those reviews follow extensive master planning efforts. So we have new information that we want to work with, and we want to reflect that information in the analysis. And that was the primary purpose of this analysis, to reflect both our updated CIP, which the board just adopted last month and the advisory committee recommended in October, to reflect the population projections that we had updated in 2022, and also as an opportunity to formalize the basis for our methodology and share the assumptions that we're using with our community. Next slide, please. So this is a super condensed version of the calculation that's in the full report. Our valuation for the reimbursement fee is one of the most prevalent used, and it's based on a current customer's net investment or the equity they have in the system. So equity in the system is just calculated by subtracting accumulated depreciation from original cost of the infrastructure, which gives us the adjusted net book value that we then reduce by donated assets. Since donated assets don't have a cost basis we need to recover, and principal and long-term debt to avoid double charging for the same capacity that new users of the system will pay for through their monthly rates. That gives us the total reimbursement fee cost basis of about 52.6 million and a reimbursement fee per EDU of 572. So it's a much smaller component of WES's SDC because that equity is so much smaller due to the principal on debt and donated assets. The improvement fee cost basis is just the SDC eligible projects in our now adopted CIP, less our SDC fund balance, which offsets more than half of our cost basis there and gives us an improvement fee of 11,128. So the total SDC under this calculation is 12,285. That's the maximum that WES could charge. WES is currently charging a $9,100 wastewater SDC. Next slide, please. The calculations are exactly the same on the stormwater side. We're just using stormwater infrastructure for the equity basis and stormwater projects for the improvement fee basis. So again, most of WES's stormwater assets are donated, almost half. So that offsets a large part of the equity and gives us a reimbursement fee per ESU of $207. Sorry, William, did you? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you can't read my lips. Can't even see them. Donated assets. Could you explain that a little more? And who's giving us all these assets?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of those assets were, they're considered donated because they were funded with grants from the original EPA grants under the Clean Water Act that helped us construct the Tri-City facility. So that's a portion of them. And then WES also receives donated assets from housing developers as they construct the developments. They then give that infrastructure to WES so that we have to maintain it. So we record that onto our books, but we're not recovering a cost because we didn't pay anything for it.
Thank you.
Sure. Mayor Milch, did you have a question?
I had basically the same question. $60 million in donated assets sounded like a lot. So the bulk of that is federal money that helped to put some of the infrastructure in place. But then it was good to get the clarity on development paid infrastructure as well. So you include all that together. Thank you.
Yes. Yep. Great. Thanks. Our total stormwater fee per ESU is $480, which is the maximum we could charge under this methodology, compared to our current fee of about $246. Next slide, please. Okay, so as context for the committee's discussion regarding a recommendation, which we'll ask for on the next slide, and a reminder from the January presentation, SDCs only make up about 7 to 12% of WES's total revenue. Total revenue last year was under 60 million, just under 60 million, and SDCs were about $5 million or 7% of that. That fluctuates from year to year based on development activity, but because they make such a small portion of our revenue, they don't have a major impact on rates. And you can see that kind of hypothetical impact illustrated on this chart. Adopting the maximum SDC under this methodology for wastewater would result in less than a $2 difference in the rate over 5 years. Conversely, if we reduced the SDC, which we aren't advocating, but we wanted to illustrate the difference, it would also be less than a $2 difference in the rate over 5 years. The impact on the stormwater side is even smaller because SDCs only comprise about 2 to 3% of the revenue there. So just as context for any recommendations the committee might make, we wanted to share that background. And next slide, I'm going to pass this over to Greg.
So we need a motion to recommend the approval of the SCC method. Oh, sorry, Greg Dioretto, right?
You're doing a great job.
Sorry, I get confused.
I know we need probably different names.
But
you're right. We have two motions they're requesting. And the first motion will be that we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they approve the SDC methodology update. So that's the first one. Then the second one will be that we recommend a motion to the Board of Commissioners, one of three, or there could even be different ones, to keep the current SDC and continue to make annual inflationary adjustments. You can see that. Either that or we request a motion to adopt the maximum amount, which is $12,285 in wastewater and $480 in stormwater, or we request a motion to phase in approach over a period of time. And I don't know if the staff had a a particular recommendation to us on any of those three in the second motion. If you do, maybe you'd share that with us. If not, we'll do our thing.
We have a hand
Looks like-
raised.
And a hand raise, yeah. A couple of hands raised. Let's see. Okay. Oh, shoot. I don't know the name.
Christina.
Denise? Christina, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're
Had-
right, Chris.
yeah.
She was
Yeah.
first.
So I guess I just have, one question. There was, on both of those slides, there was comparison to the SDCs from 2024. And on the wastewater side, the new values like 35% greater than the previous year, but it's like almost double for the stormwater side. And I was just wondering if that increase is expected, or I mean the difference over year on year.
So I think Ron and maybe Ron and Aaron can take that on. It's based on what we're going to be trying to build over the next 5 years. And we're
Okay.
building, relatively
Wow.
quite a bit of stuff. And so theoretically, the math works out to where if growth paid for growth 100%, that SDC would rise, relatively significantly. But there's kind of a backstory that I'll leave to Ron and Aaron.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we haven't really had a basis for increasing the stormwater SDC for many years. We completed our storm system master plan in 2021 or 2022, and that identified some stormwater capital improvement projects that would be SDC eligible. And we're now able to feed those into the analysis so that we actually have a basis for saying what that could be. And that's why there's a kind of a significant shift in the amount. It's just updated planning, really.
Can I speak to that?
Okay, we have a question from Mayor McGriff. Do you want to directly address this comment? William?
Yes.
Okay. Follow that.
Specifically, if rates are going up, or the SDCs are expected to go up because of anticipated future construction, my question is, when that construction is completed, what are the chances of those rates going back down?
It's a good question. So I can start, Ron.
Sure.
So at theoretical build out, it is possible that the SDC would go down because it would consist of the reimbursement fee only for any remaining capacity in the system, and there wouldn't be an improvement fee. It is just a mathematical calculation, as you can see. So if the cost bases change, then those fees can change. And the calculated rates in this analysis are actually lower than the calculated rates that we had 2 years ago as the result of the buildup in fund balance that occurred over the past few years. So it's a really good point. They can change, and they do occasionally go down if there's fewer SDC eligible investments in the future.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to give ratepayers false hope, but if there's a real possibility that they could go down, I think we ought to be upfront about that.
Mayor McGriff?
Yes, my questions actually involve the increases, but I'm assuming somebody at WES is tracking the bills that are being proposed through the legislature. There's one that would allow for an SDC deferral, which would affect everybody. I think I asked that question about a year ago about whether WES allowed for deferral of their fees. The city of Oregon City does, but it's in a very roundabout way. It's not really a deferral. You have to bond, and then there's a 9% interest because basically we're not banks. So should that bill pass, which it looks like it might, there may be effect, but there are several other bills that are running around through the legislature involving systems development charges. So that's my first question. And then my second question and concern is that Clackamas County is seeing a downturn in building. Let me just say that there is a kerfuffle in Washington, D.C. And we have costs of materials going through the roof. I don't think you're going to see a lot of people willing to pay the tariffs either side, and that's going to cause a downturn. And the reason I say that is that we have a development stakeholders group, and I meet with them every other month, and it's not a pretty picture. And then my third point is that some of you may or may not know, because you're not in our water district, but South Fork is going to be proposing a very small increase in their SDCs, which they should have been doing all along, but that's a whole nother story. And then the city of Oregon City will be requesting an increase in their parks SDCs, which unfortunately has not happened for 25 years. So there are other increases that are coming, and I don't know what the other cities are doing, but it would seem to me that we need to take all of those factors into consideration before we make some final decision about whether we're going to, phase it in, reduce it, whatever, because everybody affects everybody else.
Okay, Councilor Reich.
Yes. So I just also wanted to comment that there's reimbursement fees now, which means that there is capacity that current ratepayers and SDC payers have paid for that is now going to be supplemented by new development. And it looks like there wasn't reimbursement fees in the prior calculation.
Okay.
That's correct. So the last calculation was about $13,000, and the majority of that was the improvement fee. So the decision was made to only adopt an improvement fee at that time and not a reimbursement fee. It's an excellent point. This calculation would introduce reimbursement fees, which have a little bit more flexibility in how they can be spent, which is a good thing.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, discussion?
I have a question.
Sure, Brian.
So I looked at it as you can't really look at what everybody else charges as the big picture, because if you're a business, you're going to have to take care of your business. And the sewer department, or WES, it's basically got to run their business. So you can't go by what it's going to cost for let's say Clackamas Rivers SDC or somebody else, because everybody has got to keep their stuff in order.
Yeah.
So another thing too is, do we give a break on SDCs to all these little developments going in where they call them like cottage clusters, or one down the street from me, the person that buys the house doesn't even own the land. So it's like land lease, but you don't own it. So does the county give those particular developments a cut in SDCs?
So Brian, I think the answer is no. At least WES doesn't.
Okay, well that's my question. I agree. You can't discount everybody to take care of everything.
Right, and we understand that there's a need for affordable housing. And so one of the most brilliant thing that Aaron has done, was look at our SCCs and kind of parcel them out according to square footage. And so, yes, we're more precise now than we used to be. And so that cottage cluster and that small home isn't charged, what would have previously been a full SDC, because they don't have that impact on our system. And so we were able to, do the math and really scale that SDC according to that square footage.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I figured, but I mean, they're coming up with all kinds of creative ideas, like where you don't even own the land. You buy a house and you don't even own the land. Like the one down by me.
Mayor
Kind of like a condo, right?
No, they're a single standalone house.
It's like land trust projects.
Yeah.
A land trust. They don't own the land, but they are using their rent money to buy down the building that they are in. But the organization owns the underlying property.
Yeah, but you buy the house. You don't rent the house.
Yeah. Anyway, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I wasn't saying that WES should go back and look at everybody else's rates and see what they're charging. I said we need to be aware of what else is going on around us so that we are informed about what other jurisdictions are doing. That was my point, not that we would evaluate their rates. So you misunderstood what I said.
Okay, because I was thinking it was like to build a house, you guys are
No.
going to charge this and the water district's going to charge that into
No.
the big picture of the total
No.
cost of the developer.
No. I personally, as an elected official, want to be aware of what's going on around us so that when we get constituent questions, we're not like, oh, I don't know. Yes, I do know that it's this, or this, and you know, these things are happening, and this is how this may or may not affect you. So it's just information, but you guys didn't answer my first question.
Did or did not.
Sorry, what was that?
The question was regarding, is anyone keeping track of what's going on in the legislature with regard to deferral of SDC
Yes.
fees?
Yes, you are.
So I can speak to that, Mayor McGriff. I'm Wes's legislative liaison, and so I do work with our county public and government affairs office to review bills and weigh in where we can. So we're certainly tracking the bills that relate to potential impacts on SDC, whether it's a deferral, whether it's a financing option, and we weigh in on those. So we are following, and I think when we get into the budget presentation as well, that's some of the uncertainty that we have to factor in because we budget on a fiscal year by fiscal year. So we do have to kind of think about that as we go forward. The biggest issue for us when it comes to deferral and financing is in part some uncertainty, which is kind of an issue in and of itself of how SDCs and if SDCs get paid, but it also creates a bit of a cash flow issue. And
Well,
so
yeah, that's what I was concerned about.
yeah, and I do think there's a bit of a disconnect in the conversation, kind of broadly, and also in the legislature too, about the need for shovel-ready infrastructure and infrastructure that people can connect to, and then also the affordability issue about having SDCs be supportive of affordable housing. It's SDCs pay for infrastructure, and so kind of impacting the ability of us to collect SDCs to pay for infrastructure to make sure it's there when people need to connect to it is a bit of a challenge. But we are certainly tracking and having conversations around those potential impacts. And being, as Greg had said earlier, affordability is a huge concern for us as well, because it's part of our community concern. So
well, let me just
we're on top of it.
Yeah, let me just add to what you said. It's not only the uncertainty, but it's unfortunately it's the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
There's some misunderstanding, and again, I'm being very polite about it, in the governor's office about you just don't slap up houses without the infrastructure. And she vetoed the infrastructure bill that many of the cities were counting on last year for funding to meet the housing goals. And you can't meet any housing goals if you don't have infrastructure. The other big issue about the affordability aspect is that the way she is defining it is everything is needed housing, and that is not the case. We don't need any more Street of Dreams houses because people can't afford those. And she is not targeting the housing that really this state needs. So again, it's the tail wagging the dog. And I apologize for my soapbox, but this is a real imposition on local governments. And I'm sure David and Michael will concur with me that they're not what the industry is not wanting to build what we need. They're building what they think we need. And that's not working. And I have asked her to change the status of needed housing to provide for people that actually need it. And when you start getting your average home price in your town between $550,000 and $600,000, I don't know who that's affordable for. So everything is all kind of jumbled up together. So they're trying to get the cart before the horse to say, oh, SDCs is the problem. Well, SDCs are not the problem.
Yeah.
Right. William, you had a comment or? question?
Yes. Specifically, I know that we need a couple of motions here, but I have some questions about the second motion with those options under there. I've long been a fan of if increases are necessary, and I think that they are just because prices of everything are going up. The concept of phasing in really appeals to me, but I don't hear any fleshing out of what the phase-in plan would be, over how many years it'll be phased in, what's the percentage, and what's the
question.
cost to WES if we do a phase-in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
So I'll talk to this, and Aaron can speak to it as well. I mean, so I don't know of any utility that is charging a full SDC, saying literally growth pays for growth, and we're going to charge the $12,286 something dollars. It's always a balance. It's always been a balance, and I think it always kind of will be a balance. It's been a balance for us, and so we're essentially collecting about 75%. Like when they say, does growth pay for growth? Yes, we're collecting about 75% of what we theoretically, doing the math, could collect. And we've been doing that for the last, many few years. And so, yeah, and having a kind of a, what do you call it, an engineering news record escalator annually. Upon that, that's the model that we've been working with, and that's the model that seems to work for us. But it's ultimately up to the Board of County Commissioners to say, they look around and they say, what does it cost to build a house in Washington County? What does it cost to build a house in Multnomah County? What are the SDCs there? So it's ultimately kind of a political, decision. And
Greg, get back to this slide that's up right now. And I'm not real clear on the distinctions between those first three options.
Okay, so the first option is to continue to do what we've been doing, which was we established an SDC that recovers about 75% of the amount. And we showed the slide, before that showed that has a very marginal impact on the rate, and there you go, continue to apply annual inflationary adjustments, which is what we've modeled for our, future financial projections.
Well, for the next 5 years anyway.
10 years, but yeah.
Okay, this chart was just showing from 25 to 30.
Right.
Right, but yes, but we've modeled that farther out.
Okay.
The next one is, adopt the full SDC and raise it from 9,100 or so to 12,200 or so, which would be a significant change and would add $3,000 to the price of every house that's built in our service district. And the next one is phase in. So if you say, okay, well, we do want to pay, for growth to pay for growth. So we want to get to that 12,200 and something dollars, but, we understand that's a burden, and so we'll phase that in over 3 years, 5 years, however many years. And so that's an option. And then again, because this is ultimately a political decision, you could say, you know what, we want more housing. The thing that's not kind of factored in here is that the growth that is happening in our service area is paying for the more than 50% of our capital improvement plan that is not for growth. It's for replacing equipment that we've been using for 30 years or 40 years or 20 years. So having those new ratepayers that are coming in and maybe paying a 75% portion of the theoretical SDC, you know, they're helping pay our current residents and customers to pay for the work that, you know, they haven't taken advantage of. They've not been part of the system for the past 20 or 30 or 40 years. So anyway, so it could be that, again, that the board looks at this and said, well, I don't really care about all this, and I want to be more competitive than Washington County or Multnomah County, and so we're going to reduce the SDC in order to, you know, promote home building in Clackamas County within the West Service District. So
Well,
that's
I think
kind of the
Mayor McGriff had a really good point about the slowdown of construction for whatever reasons. If there's
Yeah.
not going to be that much more construction, maybe some of our modeling could say it would be wise to just keep the current SDC.
Which would be the first one.
Yeah.
Keep the current SDC, continue to make annual inflationary adjustments. It also says in the current one that ratepayers are paying a little bit. And we, you know, William, you and I have been on a long time, and we came to that conclusion the last time we had this, that there was some value even to ratepayers paying for construction of growth related infrastructure, because
Yep.
we do get new people into it. And we, you know, so not to, so to go to the whole 100% where that's the second option, which I agree with Greg, you know, let's just face it, that's not really too realistic. And then you could phase it in up to it. But if we stay the course, what we're doing right now, we'd move option number 1, which is keep the current SDC and continue to make annual inflationary adjustments. And that means ratepayers pay a little bit of it. Growth pays the majority of it. Seems kind of fair, you know, if you think about it. So, Carol, Bryke, you had your hand up, and then Mayor Mills.
Yes, I guess my concern with either the phase-in or keeping the current SDCs is that the cost of building the infrastructure is probably going to keep going up, and we might get too far behind that we would be unable to continue providing the service that we will need to, especially if there's some new housing going in.
All right, and that's true, although the inflationary adjustments are based on the engineering news record, I think, which is supposed to capture a good portion of that. Not at all. So you're absolutely right. We could
My experience
change
is it doesn't.
What's that, Carol? I'm sorry.
I said in my experience, it doesn't really
okay.
capture everything.
Yeah. Well, and what would happen in that case is ratepayers would end up, if we, that model of what percentage ratepayers contribute versus what development contributes would start to, would swing, so that instead of a 75-25 model, it would, you know, swing to a I'm going to make it up, 60-40 or something, for example, is what would end up happening. Good point for us to consider. Absolutely. Mayor Milch, you had a comment?
Well, it seems to me that the easier of this required motions to make is the one regarding approval of the methodology. But it's interesting, and I think you've done that in a very responsible way, because you're taking into account the capital improvement plan and other things that you know, that impact these calculations. But then, as a result of that, we come up with a very large number and then decide to kind of put it back, you know, we're sort of turning our back on all that work for the methodology. But I think what we want to do is sort of weave the two together. That the methodology says this is the amount, but taking into consideration, like Greg's comment, that the growth is also paying for not really growth, but the previous people. It's a little bit like our 2-tier rate system that we have for people that came into the district later on. So I think an approach that, you know, and I'm not going to make a recommendation myself on which one of these things we do on the choices below, but I'd be willing to make them just confirm the methodology part, and then take all the rest in consideration. But I think having a base point, you know, which is, you know, the higher number, the 12,285, based on a valid methodology, is a good way to start. And then incorporating all the political factors, the decisions, the recognition of that households are getting smaller, maybe place less strain on a system than they used to in the past, and that the housing that might be built may be, if Mayor McGriff and I and others in these cities are more affordable and also make less of a demand on the system, maybe that will justify going below the amount calculated through the methodology. But I think the methodology itself is good.
So would you be willing to make a motion to that first one then? Because we could use two motions. And
Yes, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the WES board approval of the SDC methodology update that we did this year.
okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Is there further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Chris, can you take the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Rita Baker.
Fast for me and my mute button. Yes.
All right. Christina Brow.
Yay.
Counselor Brake.
Yes.
Greg DiLoretto.
Yes.
Tony Fields.
Aye.
William Gifford.
Aye.
Counselor Golaby.
Aye.
Brian Johnson.
I'm kind of waiting to see what Carol does.
That's not, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Why? Why not?
It's
She already
really not
voted?
according to
Yeah.
Robert's Rules of Order, so you
She
either
said-
vote or
Okay,
don't vote.
abstain. I abstain.
Abstain.
That's
Yeah, you-
allowed. Counselor Cosrabati.
Aye.
Larry Lindstrom.
Aye.
Mayor McGriff.
Aye.
Mayor Milch.
Aye.
Kat Miller.
Aye.
Colleen Rockwell.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes.
Motion carries. We are now on to the second motion. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Well, to get the ball rolling, I would recommend that first option, and I would recommend that we present to the board to keep the current SDC and make annual inflationary adjustments. I find that is the middle road.
You had me
Okay, I have a
convinced
motion.
on the phase-in, so
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Mr. Gifford had me convinced about the phase-in.
Oh, okay. So I do have a motion from a member. Do I have a second for his motion?
Second.
I have a second on the motion. Further discussion. Okay, hearing none, take the roll call, please.
All right. Rita Baker.
Aye.
Christina Brow.
Aye.
Counselor Brake.
No.
Greg DiLoretto.
Yes.
Tony Fields.
Aye.
William Gifford.
Aye.
Counselor Golaby.
Aye.
Brian Johnson.
Abstain.
Counselor Cosrabati.
No.
Larry Lindstrom.
Aye.
Mayor McGriff.
No.
Mayor Milch.
No.
You said no. Just to confirm. Okay. Kat Miller. Stop.
Abstain.
And Colleen Rockwell.
Yes.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At only 8 yeses, motion does not carry.
Okay, motion fails. Further conversation. Those of you that didn't want this one, do you have an alternative for us? Carol?
I'd like to
Carol, your hands up.
motion to adopt the calculated SDC and the methodology.
Oh, okay. We have a motion to adopt the calculated SDC and the methodology. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Carol, your hands up.
Well, I wanted to comment before that I feel like in doing this methodology update and calculation, we have added a reimbursement fee that wasn't included before. And I think that's an important component of the system development charges. And with the motion that failed, that would not have taken the reimbursement fee into consideration.
Good point. Good point. Further discussion? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so
Okay, hold
sorry.
off.
All right.
So I understand where Carol's going. But that was when I asked the question before, that was one of the things I didn't totally understand. So maybe just the reimbursement would go back to the person that's paying the SDCs?
No, it's
Where
just
who would the reimbursement go back to?
it goes to WES. So it's
Goes
part
back to
of the
WES.
total SDC. So it pays them back for infrastructure they put in the ground ahead of development. So you got the improvement going forward. You got what did they put in already for development? So then you get reimbursed. Isn't that right, Greg or Aaron?
It covers the current unused capacity
of the facility.
I still don't know how
how you feel
about that. Primarily because I don't subscribe to growth for growth's sake. Right. And everything that we do for the cities, counties is all predicated on growth. And I keep telling myself it's not a sustainable resource. Growth isn't going to continue forever and ever. Amen. So it's a philosophical difference. It's nothing to do with WES or whatever, but that's the way we're going with the way we do things. And it's just not sustainable.
Valid point. Any other folks want to weigh in on this?
Tony, it's his hand raised.
Oh, Tony, sorry.
Yeah.
No worries. So I'm not opposed to doing the full methodology. I do worry a little bit about slowing down housing, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the deal breaker. But I will say that while I'm okay with it, I would really prefer doing the phase-in or partial increase as opposed to an instant full meal deal. And I'm happy for feedback on that, but it seems to be the more, I don't know, amenable to, slowly adjusting the rate and having, a less profound effect instantly. And I say that mostly because, like you, I see the concerns in DC. I understand, the construction side. My professional career, I also deal with infrastructure upkeep, and frankly, we're really worried about long-term effects around funding for that. And I think going a little slower is maybe the more prudent option here. And I appreciate everybody having the opportunity to let me steal some oxygen.
That's good.
Thank you.
Aaron, did you have a response to that? I assume that's why your hand's up.
Please.
Yeah, just real quick, that was a great point that Councilor Breik made regarding the reimbursement fee. I wanted to offer the partial increase of the calculated SDC could entail an option where you recommend the board adopt the full reimbursement fee calculated and keep the improvement fee as it is. So you'd bring in that $572 portion and then going forward, make inflationary adjustments. So that's an option too.
Okay. I think David had his hand up and then Mayor Milch. David?
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. I had to go off camera. I'm headed to a school board meeting at the same time. Our city would also appreciate a phased in approach rather than if we're going this direction, just the full amount from day one. So we would appreciate a phased in approach.
And Mayor Milch, your comment?
Well, just a question about, sometimes we see these fees applying to a large development consisting of several homes going in at once. Sometimes it's just an individual, a remodel or a change of use of a small piece of property. How much discretion do we have to lower a fee on an individual basis? And what's the process for doing that? I like to have the ability to do that, but you don't want to, you don't want to lower it for everybody. And sometimes you want to have some consistency and some stated rates. Can you let me know how that process works?
Well, I can speak a little bit to that. There's really no ability. There's nothing in our rules, because Yeah, there's nothing in our rules that say if you're a nonprofit or a shelter or that we can adjust SDCs. It's really just math and what impact are you going to have on our system. So no, we don't have flexibility around that.
Adam, your hand's up.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify, but cities do, right? Like cities could as an incentive cover a portion of those SDCs, correct? Right?
Yes. Oh yeah, yes.
Right. So, and that's kind of the key with that, is that by raising it, it gives leverage, a little bit more leverage back to cities to say, have a little bit more say in what gets developed here. The thing with the developers as well is that both the governor's bills, housing bills, favor market rate development and continues the trend that we're on. And that's continued market rate development at a rate, at a cost that people can't afford. I'm not opposed to the phase-in myself. I would like to do a phase-in for the full amount, not for the partial though. So, and if others are okay with that, then I would move to withdraw my previous motion and then, or amend my previous motion for the phase-in full approach of the calculated SDC in the methodology.
Okay, let's see if I get the Roberts rules right. You can amend your motion, get a second. We'll vote on the amendment first. Is that right? I think that's right. And then we go back to the first one. Or
Can I just take
ahead.
away my second of the first one?
Okay, we'll dispense with it. Let's just get it done. I used to have a guy on a board I was on. He says, I got Wayne's rules, and so we're just going to get it done. So, all right. Adam, you want to withdraw your motion? Carol withdraws her second. Let's start over again. I need a motion for the next, what do you guys want to do on that?
I motion for the phase-in full increase of the calculated SDC in the methodology.
Okay, do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Discussion. Greg, you have a comment?
Phase in over what period of time? The
You're
last
getting
time
shut-
that we talked about this, there was a phase in of, I think, 3 years. It could be 5 years. Could be. So when we say phase,
Well, that gets back to my original question as to how much is that going to cost WES if we do it 3 years or 5 years? Ms. Blue?
Just got a calculator running.
Well,
Yeah, I was trying to do some quick calculations. We would have to model that. The difference in total revenue, when we looked at the full rate of 12,285, implementing it immediately, there's a difference in revenue collected of $14 million over 5 years. So if we phase that in, it would be, less than that, some lesser amount. And we could certainly model it and come back to the committee with some options if you guys are interested in going with that approach.
But in theory, it's not going to cost WES anything because the rates will be making up the difference in order for you to do the CIP over that period of time. What will happen is we'll see SDCs cross the rate model that rates pay, and then that much will then start going in there. So I mean, the revenue total that WES should get should be a zero-sum game, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's going to be a zero-sum game. So you can decide whether you want to do it for 3 years as a ratepayer or 5 years as a ratepayer. Mayor Mills?
Well, it looks like we originally looked keeping the current SDCs. The 9,100 is about 74% of the recommended amount. If we said we will start with 75% and then go up to 80, 85, 90, 90, so 5% a year over 5 years, it would get us to 100% as a 5-year phase in. And it would be a little more predictable in advance rather than having to base it on inflationary adjustments. Now, it may not keep up with inflation, and it may not be adequate because, as my colleague referred to earlier, we may be on very we don't know what changes are going to happen at the federal level. But that's an approach that is a little more predictable and maybe would motivate developers to move more quickly on things, and it's something to consider.
Let's see who is up. Tony, your hand was up.
I was just going to point out, if we do the 5-year approach and it's predictable, then it might front load some of the fence sitters or the folks that are ready to go shovel ready, they may expedite their work to catch the lower rate.
Right.
So it might actually help drive some growth in regards to housing or whatever, simply because folks are trying to get ahead of the increase.
Carol?
And also, even with a phased-in approach, would WES still do the inflationary increases every year?
I think we have to. Don't you? Where's Greg? Where's Aaron?
It's a good question.
Yeah. So Aaron, I assume you were assuming you would still do that.
Yeah, we would probably propose that to the board to keep
you
up
have
with
to.
construction costs.
Right.
That was my understanding.
Right. So maybe I can phrase what we've all talked about in this kind of motion that we have here. So we're talking about a phased in full approach towards a full approach over 5 years with annual inflationary adjustments. Is that right? That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. Okay. So let's vote on that. Phase in approach, 5 years, annual inflationary adjustments. Mayor Milch?
Well, I'll make a motion that we begin with 75% of the amount calculated through the new methodology, and then we increase that in factors of 5% over the next 5 years. That's the phase in, and with annual inflationary adjustments.
Okay.
Isn't that, didn't we already have a motion on the floor?
We did have a motion on the floor.
We just didn't have years.
Yeah, we didn't have the years.
Right.
Yes.
It just needs to be amended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
So
the
we'll just
years.
amend the one we have to go for 5
Amend
years.
that, and I would amend a second. Yes.
Okay.
That's
So we're
fine.
going to amend that motion to include 5 years.
Alrighty.
All right. Let's vote on the amendment unless there's more discussion. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. Rita Baker.
Aye.
Christina Brow.
Aye.
Counselor Brake.
Yes.
Greg DiLoretto.
Yes.
Tony Fields.
Aye.
William Gifford.
Aye.
Counselor Goloby.
Aye.
Brian Johnson.
Aye.
Counselor Khosrabadi.
Aye.
Larry Lindstrom.
Aye.
Mayor McGriff.
Aye.
Mayor Milch.
Aye.
Kat Miller.
Aye.
Colleen Rockwell.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries. This was excellent work, committee. I mean, have this discussion and everybody participating. This is really what we're all about. So I thank you as a chair. You guys made it great.
And
All
since
right.
we're running low on time, Greg, what are your thoughts on having an April special session for a budget preview, or do you want to?
You can do that. I'm going to be in Hawaii for a month, so I don't really care.
Well, you take your laptop, Greg, and you zoom in.
I know. I've done that before when it was COVID.
I'm kidding.
Family
Don't
wondered
take
why.
your laptop.
Aaron, what are
Chris,
your thoughts?
Can I
Oh,
say
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing just to
Yes,
button
please.
this up? So now that we have that recommendation, I just want to let you know that we've scheduled so the process will be a policy session in front of the board on April 1st, a second policy session in front of the board on April 15th, a 90-day posting, and then a public hearing on July 17th. So keep an eye on all that.
And we'll certainly keep you up to date along the way as well.
Let us know when that hearing is. I'll try to attend on the first one.
And I do think, that we are going to be talking to the board, just so you know. I said they've never not taken a recommendation, but we will be talking about relative SDCs and things like that, and may get some testimony from folks. And so
maybe
thank you for your hard work, and we'll take this to the board.
Okay,
as we always do.
Yes.
Something we do need to look at just really quickly. I have no problem having a meeting in April to do a budget meeting, but in looking at your dates, you've got 5/15. Carol and I are both on the proposed budget committee, and that is the day that the city of West Lynn is having a Clackamas Cities meeting. Starting at like 5:30, something like that. Do you have that in your calendar, Carol? I've got it on my calendar. You're on mute.
Yeah, she is.
I have to look at the right calendar.
Yeah.
So what, Aaron, you were going to cover the budget calendar? That's what you were going to talk about?
Yeah, a quick preview, and I could move through it pretty quick tonight. It's only about a 10-minute presentation. I could probably make it faster.
What's the pleasure of the committee? We have 5 minutes until we're supposed to end. I had some report outs, but
Just go to the budget calendar. Because
yeah, just do that one because really it only applies to the people that are on our budget committee, right?
Right. And we can talk, I mean, I'm happy to have a meeting in April to talk about budget.
Right. And the rest of us will see it at our May meeting. I believe the whole group will see it, but is that okay, Aaron?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you know who the budget committee is from our group, the 5 people.
Yes.
All right. So unless anybody else has an objection, we'll just have Aaron coordinate with you 5 and make sure that that calendar works for you folks. And that should do it.
Well, I just figured where the 5 of us were here, you could just pull up that sheet in the PowerPoint, and we could, rather than trying to do a,
Fair enough.
call this person, call this, we could just talk about it for like 2 minutes right now.
Okay, pull it up.
Great.
Fair
Chris,
enough.
I think it's slide 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think it is. I've got it in front
There
of
we
me.
go. Okay. So yes, as Member Griff was sharing, the advisory committee meeting is currently scheduled for May 15th, and that will be the comprehensive overview of WES's proposed budget. So it's generally the full meeting. And then we don't have a date time set for the budget committee meeting, which takes place at the Public Services Building on the Red Soils campus, but we know it will be sometime between the 19th and 29th. We could potentially, if you guys know that you have a conflict, we could make a request of county administration to avoid a certain time.
I have a conflict on the 29th.
Okay, great.
I have a conflict the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's my conflict that whole week.
Okay. Councillor Brike, William Gifford, and is Neil Schulman present tonight? I know Christopher's off.
No, Neil was unable to make it.
Okay. Councillor Brike and William, do those dates, tentative dates, work for you both?
I'll make it work.
Okay,
It
wonderful.
should work.
Great, we appreciate you.
Yeah, I can't make it work because I won't even be in the country. So I'm just telling you ahead of time, if we're looking at the 29th, I can do anything before that. So
Great, perfect. We'll reflect that to our county administration, try to get scheduled earlier. All right, thank you.
Okay, good, we did that.
Carol, what do you want to do about the 15th?
Yeah, that's our regular meeting.
I could not find that on my calendar, so I'll have to confirm.
Okay, well, I got a notice about it, which is why I put it on my calendar, because it's your guys' meeting.
Yeah.
It says Clackamas City's Old Westland City Hall, 5:30 to 7.
The Old Westland City Hall.
Yeah, it's going to be open in the next couple of weeks here, and matter of fact, I have a meeting in there on Monday. So anyway, so we'll confirm that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yep, no, good move. Okay, we have committee discussion and report outs. Does anybody have any report outs?
No.
No.
That was my report out.
That was your report. I had a couple things I wanted to share with the group. If I might, since I'm the chair, I can share them. So early last month, I gave a background interview to Newsweek magazine regarding PFAS. Most of you all know what those are and the effect they may have on us. Newsweek's still contemplating whether they'll do a story or not. Sometimes it's just background information for a bigger story, but I was able to, they asked me to talk to them about it, so I did. I went to the Special Districts Association conference earlier last month, and we also talked about PFAS in the wastewater caucus. And so we had a conversation about that because it's coming down. One of the big things I did want to report to the group, because maybe you can watch the news media stuff. So many of you know, last 10 years, I've been a spokesperson for the American Society of Civil Engineers, their report card on America's infrastructure. And I was president of the 160,000 member organization in 2013. And every 4 years since 98, they've issued a report card, and this is the year. So we're going to be unveiling the report card Tuesday, March 25th in Washington, D.C. There's already a lot of interest among Congress about what's going to be the result. And we'll have a grade for wastewater and stormwater nationwide, not just Oregon. And so be something to keep your eye on. I'm going to be attending And I'll be doing a panel discussion on drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater results. So I'll be doing that. And then I'll lead a discussion with industry leaders in the afternoon on trends in the water arena. So on innovation, resilience, and funding. We'll have that one will also be done. And then I'm going to visit the delegation, which I've done for the last 12 years. So I've started to develop relationships with them. And this is aside from my working career. And the big issue that we're facing, and I know the mayors and councilors on this call or in this meeting are well aware of this, but one of the provisions for some of the key tax cuts that are being proposed by the administration is they're looking at how they're going to make up for this lost revenue, which could be anywhere from 1.5 trillion to $15 trillion over the next decade. So one of the things they're looking at is a change to the tax exemption of municipal bonds. And in fact, this happened 15 years ago, and I was visiting with Senator Wyden, and he was trying to sell us on these Build America bonds. And they were looking at taking away local governments' tax exempt status on the municipal bonds. And those of us in the business, we didn't see any value of it back then. And it's a big hit. It's estimated that if we lose our exemption on tax exempt bonds, that would raise about $40 billion in revenue annually, which sounds like a lot of money, but in overall, compared to everything, that's really not very much. But if we all lose our ability for tax exempt bonds, that could cost us $800 billion in additional interest expense that we're going to have to raise from higher taxes or cuts in our infrastructure projects. And after I get done releasing the report card on Tuesday, we're going to see what that gap is between what we need to fund infrastructure in this country and what's going to happen if you have to come up with another $800 billion to fund infrastructure.
It's not.
We're not the only organization. What's that, Mayor?
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I know. And we're not the only organization. I know the National League of Cities is working on it, AWWA, Water Environment, just about everybody that touches infrastructure is thinking about this. So if the opportunity arises at a meeting, I'm sure you'll all talk about it as well. So that was my report out. If there's nothing else, not bad. 2 minutes.
I have,
oh, great.
Sorry,
yes.
one more quick thing I forgot to mention earlier. So the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce is having a State of the City event at the Ainsworth House on April 4th from 11:30 to 1:30 with our very own Mayor Denise McGrath.
Nobody we know is talking.
And we have a table. We have 8-person table. We've got 2 slots right now. I'm inviting the county commissioners, but I want to extend that. We got 6 seats available. So I want to extend that invitation to you folks, and you'll be seeing an email here shortly.
Okay. Is there anything else for the, I'm sorry, go.
Yes, Mr. Wyden and Congresswoman Bynum are having a town hall on Sunday at Randall Hall at the college at 5:30. If you like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We just had a session with her. Mayor Milch and I attended last Saturday, having a discussion with her. And of course, our main thing was infrastructure, 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 infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you.
What we learned from something like that is that we in Clackamas County are so much better off than a lot of smaller cities in other parts of the state. I wanted to bring up one other thing. I saw a notice. I had a question for Greg. I saw something in the League of Oregon Cities bulletin about the results of a court case, San Francisco versus the EPA. Right. The headline was, "This was a win for cities." And I wonder, do we do what we do just because we want to be in compliance with federal regulations, or as the old Hebrew National Hot Dog slogan used to be, we answer to a higher authority? I believe we are a water district that does answer to a higher authority. We do clean water for the sake of doing clean water, not because we want to be in compliance with a certain law. Greg, you want to weigh in on that? Do I have that right?
Yes, and thank you. I overlooked that earlier as well, so I apologize. So yeah, there's a lot of media attention around this case between the city of San Francisco and EPA, and there's a lot of hyperbole around it. If you look at it, the degradation of clean water stuff, but really what it was, I'm trying to be succinct here.
Too late.
So we have a we have a permit from this delegated from EPA to the state that says you need to meet these certain requirements. And it's this many of that and that many of this. And in order to meet water quality standards, you need to meet these criteria that we can measure. And so in San Francisco, they put permit requirements that were narrative and subjective. So you need to make sure that the San Francisco Bay doesn't have an algae bloom that creates odors. And it's like, well, that's not something that we can measure. That's not something that we can anticipate necessarily. It's not something that we even cause necessarily. So really what the Supreme Court said was, look, EPA, you have, if San Francisco Bay has a problem with nuisance algae blooms, there's a process to understand how that works and how much nutrients you can discharge in order to not, contribute to that problem. And so essentially that was the court case was, no, EPA needs to have, or DEQ in our case, needs to have like numeric and, rational permit limits and in order to meet water quality standards. So it will not, and Oregon is not doing what California was doing in that case. So from our standpoint, it's not a problem, but yeah, that was the issue. And, whether you want to interpret that as a weakening of Clean Water Act requirements or, requirements around regulation, I personally don't, and I was a regulator for 13 years. So, I get that. I don't think it was. I think it was just getting clarity and protecting municipalities from, spurious third-party lawsuits and things like that, and things that we can't control. Like, we'll meet all the conditions, and yeah.
Okay. Oh, I have a hand from Christina. You had a comment, Christina?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of add to that. It's something that we dug into quite a bit with what I work on. It comes down to what EPA or what agencies can limit. They can apply effluent limits, but making a narrative criteria for the end result in the receiving water for that effluent is not an effluent limit. So you can't limit an end result like an algal bloom or something from happening in the receiving water. But like Greg said, if you understand the nutrients involved, you can set effluent limits for nutrients, but you can't dictate an effluent limit be something in the receiving stream, an end result. So it's,
yeah,
I didn't interpret it as being this catastrophic.
So the win for the cities, the win that the cities get is the clarity and the objectivity of the standards. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Which has always been an issue for us. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn?
I hope you give us your report card. I'd love to see that.
We will do it. We have one for Oregon that we issued last summer as well. I'd be happy to share that with you.
That'd be great. I'd love to see it.
Okay, I can do that. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Great meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
See you in
Good
May.
night.
Bye-bye.